Well, hi there, listeners, and welcome to another scintillating episode of the Magic Morning Wood. I am as always, am your host, Ron, and with me is
It's Clay. So,
it's Butthead, apparently.
what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, there's video on this as well nowadays. So
What?
there's video on this as well nowadays, and so people can see
Yeah.
exactly what you're doing.
What am I doing?
Hey,
I thought this is video. We're doing this in video now.
yeah, for the time being, until I sort
Not
out.
really.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't warn me. I didn't do my
Okay.
part.
You look
Hi.
amazing. You look.
Well, hi there. I should turn some light on. Okay, good. Okay, there we go. Now you can see me better. Hi. Okay, well, hello again, fans, all three of you. Welcome back to another episode. And yeah, and so first of all, let's start with the best part of every episode. How's it going, Clive?
Yeah, good. You?
Yeah, good.
Excellent.
All right, great. Got that out of the way. So let's dive in what we're going to talk about today.
As long as we don't fuck up that bit, we're golden.
Yeah. I mean, it's we gotta flow. We gotta keep the flow. The routine.
I know, but I don't want to become complacent and just not give it enough thought. It's I really want to know how you are, and
yeah,
I'm sure you also want to know how I am. So we don't want to. Oh,
okay. So I have no idea what we're referring to. What was the last movie we did? I can't remember.
Well, Darren was on, and we talked. Don't torture a duckling.
Right. Got it. Thank you very much. I'm caught up now. Okay, so yes, last one we did was we had our guest Darren. Hi, Darren. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, we did Don't Torture a Duckling, right? Which was ended up being about a priest killing kids.
Oh, spoilers, by the way.
Spoilers, by the way. Of course, but of course, you should have heard that episode already. So in this case, we've already spoiled it.
But anyway, apologies for no warning for that one. What else should we spoil while we're here?
Well, anyone who has seen if you're watching this episode for the first time, then I don't know why you're starting with this one. But if you have seen her, you'll know that everything is spoilers.
New listeners and viewers, right?
Come on. Why would you start with this one? Anyway,
Rosebud's a sledge. Rosebud's a sledge.
You know that there is 100% spoilers all the time in our podcast. So anyway, so today we're going off of Child Murderers. I decided to use that as my connective tissue.
And so did I.
And yeah, and so did you. And yeah, so I chose the help me out, what year was it? 2007?
Yes.
Right? 2007. Okay, 2007 kind of indie, kind of a very low budget indie flick called The Gray Man, which was actually like a original title, but it was retitled to Wisteria: The Horrible Story of Albert Fish.
Right.
Apparently, I'm not sure why they did that, but
yeah. Hang on now. So something I wanted to stop, because this is something I had never considered before in my life until I watched this film, and it became a thing that I'd never thought of before in my life. And that is, how do you spell grey?
You never thought about that before? Yeah.
No.
As an English teacher, I come across that all the time. There are actually EY and AY are both acceptable, I think.
Is there like a standard, like usually there's one that Brits tend to use, one Americans tend to use? Is there a...
I actually flip-flop. I'll just use either one. So
I think I do as well.
Yeah.
And that's why it became an issue, because I wrote down the title and then it came up, I didn't, but hang on now. And then I got to thinking about it. And yes, I have no standard for this. Like,
yeah.
Like I'll do other ones I'll do as well. Like I'll flip center as well. Sometimes I'll do RE.
Oh, really? You'll do the American way, really?
Yeah, theater as well. I might do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Color with no U?
No, I wouldn't go that far. That's...
Oh my gosh, that's just heresy.
Yeah. I'm assuming you Canadians do it the proper way, the U in there.
Yeah, yeah. Only REs and URs. OURs.
Something Zation or
Oh yeah, yeah. Would you spell it with a Z or a Z or Z? I guess Z or an S. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We flip flop on that one. Improvisation. I would spell improvisation with an S. But there's other ones where you know sometimes I get like I'm sure this is really fascinating for people watching and listening right now. But
Absolutely.
sometimes on I have my spell check or my sort of my language set to UK or Canadian English. So
Yeah.
like when you're typing on like Word, Microsoft Word, or whatever, and it gives you like that red underline
Yes.
to say that you've spelled it wrong. I don't like to see that because if I spell it my way, I want it to be correct, right? So, but for some reason I'll put it on UK, but it'll still say that OUR is incorrect or
Right.
the S is incorrect or something. So yeah, I don't know what's.
It's good to know that you're in the same. I'm glad I'm not the only one stubborn enough to disagree with this spell check because I'm as well. No.
I was like, that's all right. I have it on UK. Well, and actually we'll stop and I was like, wait a second, is this on American or is this on UK? And I'll actually, but it'll say UK, and I'll say, why is it saying it wrong? It's because the Americans really can't bear to have us have people spell it any other way. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. But speaking on going back to gray versus gray, I'm not really sure. Let's see. I just looked it up. I Googled it, and it says that AY is more common in the US, while EY is more common in other English-speaking countries.
I think normally I guess I would probably default to EY. I think.
Yeah, which I guess is the way that most people other than Americans use it. So AY is kind of more the American way. So maybe like spelling ER or OR for color, whatever, like that. Sometimes if you spell it that way, it's probably the same way.
But obviously not important enough to go out of their way to. I don't think they would have redone all the credits and stuff for the British release of this film in the same way as the first time I remember being aware actually of the colours thing was when that Dennis Hopper movie Colours came out in the UK. And obviously they didn't go to all the trouble of changing, all the artwork for the posters and the actual credits. So they didn't change colours to COLOURS in the UK colours. And I remember thinking, that's wrong, that is. Those movie people can't spell. But it turned out it was it's an American thing.
American spelling, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes if I have to write something for Americans, I'll do the American spelling just because to avoid the headache that Americans always give me.
Yeah, it's up there, isn't it? Which is the worst? Which is the most problematic? That or gun control? I mean, they both cause a lot of harm in the world.
Yeah. I'd go for the spelling. Actually, probably I give that the edge. But
yeah, because it's more insidious under the skin.
Yeah. And also the inches and the miles that too. Yeah. So imperial system. Yeah.
Anyway. Fuck those dudes. So, let's get on with the
that was a great transition. So back to the gray man.
That's always the smoothest of transitions I find. You just fuck those dudes.
Yeah, fuck those guys. Anyway, so yes, the gray man. Gray man or Wisteria is a 2007 very low budget, but not bad for not bad production.
I've seen worse in terms of production values.
Yeah, production values, considering how low the budget was. I think
it was shot in, that's Oklahoma, standing in for, I guess, New York City, right?
Is it? Okay, Oklahoma. Yeah. Okay, is it? Yeah, Oklahoma, yes. Shot in Oklahoma. And directed by Scott L. Flynn, who I'm not particularly familiar with. I think he didn't do much else other than that. And written by Lee Fontanella and Colleen Cochran, also who I know familiar with, and starring Patrick Bauchow, who I did recognize. Have you seen him before? He was in
he's in a couple of things.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. He does a bunch of like kind of a character actor. He was in like Carnival. He was in. I think I saw him in like a bunch of stuff. But he's Belgian, right? So Belgium, right? So
yeah, no, he's a perennial. Again, I don't know much about him, but yeah, I've seen him in so many things. And he's neither particularly terrible or great, or he's just a reliable character. Looks vaguely like some other people. One of those guys. I don't even know. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. I'm guessing it's not Bauchow, but
but that's good enough, right? So
It'll do. I like the sound of
It'll
Bao
do.
Chow. It's
Bao
so,
Chow.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So Bao Shao, maybe Bao Shao is French, right? It's Belgian.
French spelled
Either
Bacau, I would go maybe.
Bacau, not S sound. Anyway. Well, here we go with more pronunciation. So, and I didn't really recognize anyone else except for one other guy, the son, which was Silas Weir Mitchell, who I
Yes.
recognized from.
He's
some
the one
other
I
stuff.
recognize as well. And I couldn't
Yeah,
figure out, like, what the fuck do I recognize him from?
I knew him from Prison Break. He was really good in Prison
I
Break.
think that's what I know him from.
Did you see Prison Break?
Yeah, years ago when it was new. Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't think that
Yeah.
was your kind of thing, but yeah.
It wouldn't be now, but back then I was a fool. So I did watch quite a bit of Prison Break.
Yeah, so. But yeah, he was the only one I recognized, but then a bunch of other non-known name actors. Anyway, so this, of course, is the story of real life serial killer Albert Fish, right? So Albert Fish, who was a turn, I guess, turn of the century. I don't know what year it was.
It's late 20s, early
Late 20s,
yeah,
late 20s, early 30s serial killer who was one of the first kind of big serial killers, I think, right? Was he kind of
up there with H.H. Holmes, right?
Right, yeah, around that same time. And yeah, where he killed a bunch of kids and ate them, and actually it was a cannibal, so I think he became like pretty. But
although
surprisingly,
going by this film, you'd think he'd only murdered one. I mean, I don't say that, like that's not enough. He only killed one child. What's the big deal? I mean, they aren't even passing references to any other victims, as far as I can tell. Right? It's just what's her name? Grace Budd, was that her name?
Grace Budd, yeah. So that, I think
I
that was the only one he got. I looked up the real story, and I think that was the only one that he actually got like actually convicted for.
Yes, but it's odd that they didn't even put like a thing at the end saying, and he was later convicted.
Well, you saw him throwing someone into the furnace at the very beginning of, right? So
I suppose
it implies that there are others, right? So
I guess, but not strongly enough for. I mean, I was surprised how little they mentioned it. But I think there was a certain amount of. I don't know if they assumed that most people knew the story or something, because oddly enough, strangely, actually, Albert Fish nowadays isn't as notorious as I think you would expect him to be, right? He's not that well known in the pantheon of. You have to be a bit of a serial killer fanatic to know Albert Fish, right?
Which is surprising because he was kind of one of the original ones and quite grisly.
Yeah, OG.
Yeah, the OG cannibal, right? So I mean,
yeah, pedophile cannibal as well. I mean, it ticks a lot of boxes, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and pedophile cannibal, yeah. So I mean, so it doesn't. You'd think that he would be kind of higher up the list of
the Hall of Fame, right?
The Hall of Fame, but but not so much. So because when I told you because when I researched, I was just looking for movies about child killers. That's what I kind of did the search for. And I came across. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I had never heard of Albert Fish actually.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, this guy's got an interesting story. I had the same reaction. I was like, why isn't this guy more famous? He sounds like this would be kind of a famous serial killer, but I don't know him, so I should find out more about him. But you were like, really? You're like, whoa, yeah, this movie about Albert Fish, awesome, right? I love me a pedophile cannibal, right? So
well, I was familiar with Albert Fish, but oddly enough, I wasn't aware that there was a film about. I knew there was.
That's what I think. You were excited that there was a film, right? So
yeah, there was a documentary, I know, but a feature film, no, I wasn't aware. So yes, I was quite psyched to.
And I would say that I'm also surprised that there haven't been more movies about this guy because, based on the fact that how notorious he should be, you'd think there would have actually had another, a lot of people like to mine this kind of field for drama. I mean, it seems like a pedophile, cannibal. I mean, it seems like the perfect movie perfect guy to make a movie about. But
then again, I suppose we are still waiting on the long-promised H.H. Holmes film as well, which was once going to be starring Leonardo DiCaprio and.
I think, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think the difference might be is because even though the film hasn't actually been made yet, it's been in gestation for. I think the difference is H.H. Holmes had his big kind of literary bestseller in the in the form of, what was it called, The Devil in the City of Lights, or whatever it was called,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, right.
which is the one that they're going to base the film on, and everyone read the book, so H.H. Holmes kind of went up in people's
Yeah.
people's
He also had that really kind of striking kind of setting where he had like the World's Fair, right? So
yes,
it's kind of like a more cinematic kind of idea, right?
yes,
Whereas Alfred
and
was just kind of traveling around and killing kids wherever he could find them, right?
yes,
So
well, not
yeah,
kids, but and as well the whole house of with trapdoors and
yeah,
acid baths. Yeah, so it's a well, yeah, but still, I as far as I know, there isn't like the definitive like Albert Fish bestseller.
right,
As far as I know,
right.
there might be, but I'm
Right.
not aware of it. So I think that's maybe why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either anyway, if it was surprising there hasn't been more movies about it, and this is the only one that I've ever heard of that you've ever heard of,
Mm.
and unfortunately it was quite low budget, so they couldn't even really do a lot that they would normally do.
Although the
It was
budget,
also
I don't think the budget. I don't think the budget
didn't hurt it that much, but
cripples the film. No, I think it has other problems beyond budget, right?
but I wasn't. I could tell like anyway. We'll get into it a little bit. Anyway, it's a story of this guy Albert Fish who's
Kill some kids.
huh
Who kills
who
them?
kills kids
Yeah.
and eats them, right? Yeah. So basically, that's about it, right? So, and most of it's based in relatively in history and historical fact. Some of it there's a bit of dramatization for
Yeah.
for
Well, it's I suppose it's the police procedural approach, right? So
right, yeah,
our other main character is a detective, as played by Jack Connolly,
right,
and he's like,
Detective Will
yeah,
Keaton.
he has his own demons in his past,
Yeah,
blah blah
of
blah,
course.
and all that. And kind of every now and the thing that slightly something that always irks me in well, almost always irks me in films is the arbitrary come and go first person narration. Like either have a first person narration or
or don't.
don't just
Yeah,
employ it when it gets a bit difficult to explain what's going on, right? That's
yeah, right,
always a
right,
bit of
yeah.
a bugbear of mine.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this
yeah. I
is,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah. Keep it or lose it, right? So
yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, I agree. So yeah, it's sporadic and it's yeah. The movie was I mean it's only an hour and 37 minutes, so it's not that long.
No,
I interestingly I kind of there's a couple of reviews I read that I kind of said that it was they compared it to like a Disney Plus movie because it's there's no gore, there's no like scenes almost at all of like almost anything shocking. It's everything that happens off screen, and
right.
it's all kind of referred to and stuff like that. But it's I think they were kind of going more for like the kind of the thriller kind of suspenseful kind of angle, whatever. But
Although
sometimes
the language is
yeah.
strong. Like when they read out his letters, right? Like that they don't
right, yeah.
there.
But apparently that was actually like word for word actually his
that's
real
right,
letter. Yeah. So that they took that, so they were taking that. But yeah. So I don't know. So what did you make of this movie, Clive?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a. We should also apparently the other apparently noteworthy person is the little girl who plays Grace Budd, who isn't that little. Lexi Ainsworth. Apparently, I can't remember which. She's on a soap. It's something like General Hospital or Young and the Rest. She's on one of those things.
General Hospital. She was in General
Yeah,
Hospital.
there we go. So if you were
Also
a viewer of General Hospital, you would know who she is, right? I guess.
okay, yeah. She was in Shameless too. That one with
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so probably worth flagging up that we don't know who she is.
Macy.
She is a name to some people, right?
There's a couple other character actors I think I maybe like. Also John Aylward I kind of recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so but anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not a terrible film by any means. I don't know. It's quite I was hoping you might be able to articulate what I'm not able to. I can't quite tell I mean, the only thing I could definitely point to, and even this is a little, I don't have any solid examples, is some of the line delivery and some of the dialogue among the cop characters feels a little off, almost like someone working in a second language or something like that, or like the timing was weird and it just feels very kind of it didn't seem authentic. It seemed like strange, but
Yeah.
that's only one thing. Overall, everything's a bit off, but I can't tell why it doesn't rise to the occasion. Like I said, it's not terrible at all, but it's just it's like a souffle that doesn't quite rise or something. There's like something missing, but I don't know what it is. How about you?
Well, yeah, I will echo the line delivery thing. I wouldn't think it was. I wouldn't say it was just the cop characters. I think most actors were kind of doing this. It kind of had this sort of feel of like high school kids putting on a play, like where they don't really, they're reading the lines, and the line was not written exactly realistically, and they're kind of reciting the line, but they don't really have that realism element to it, where it doesn't feel like something someone would really say. It was always this sort of like almost a staginess to
Yes,
all
yes,
this kind of wooden kind of delivery, like, oh, hello, it's nice to see you today. Like, it's not a good example, but this sort of like, there was no, it didn't feel like didn't feel like a real conversation anyway.
yeah.
It felt like
It,
everyone was just reciting lines, so
it's kind of like they haven't been given the latitude to, well, make the lines your own or anything. It's like they've
right,
been
yeah,
told you have to stick to the dialogue, except
right.
that the dialogue isn't good enough to,
Isn't good enough to keep it, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then they're not good enough to make it sound more natural, right? So it's
Either that or they're not allowed to, because like you said, a lot of these, like Bouchow, Bacau, whatever, and I guess Silas Weir Mitchell as well, and all these people, they're not necessarily fit, but they're solid, right? Like they've careers, they're like proper journeyman actors.
right.
I if I had to guess, I would put it more. I would put the blame maybe somewhere else, like on a first-time
director,
writer being very precious with the dialogue, or because I think these people probably could make, because I've seen them in other things, and they're not always like this, right? They're not always.
well, yeah, I mean, even like Patrick, whatever Bouchow, whatever his name is, and
Yeah.
Silas Mitchell, I think they were like less awkward than some of the less norm. Like, yeah,
he comes off
like,
the best. He comes off the best.
yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, Silas was really, you could tell he had more acting chops. Whereas the other one, it seemed, it happens a lot with sort of like low budget, like 80s movies and 90s movies, where like, obviously it's like, we've done several of these types of movies where it just feels like, they've, first time actors or someone from the local community theater, and they've brought them in, and they don't really know how to act that well. They're just sort of reciting their lines, and it feels like they're kind of like saying that, right? So that I'd say there was just lack of experience, I think, for a lot of them. Right? So
Right.
yeah, and then yes, I think the considering the low budget, the production value was not too bad. It's like all the costumes seemed pretty period, and all the it didn't really be like, there was nothing too anacronistic or too kind of out of place. There's a
fine. I didn't have a
it still
problem.
felt like that.
Yeah.
But I agree, there was also something missing, and I don't know if I mean, certainly I don't want to see the kids be killed. That's not something that you really, it's nothing, but I think that it needed a little bit. Well, maybe that's what you were missing then, right? But I don't know. It's not really the gore that was missing so much as I don't think it really. It was. I don't think they had the suspense, or they didn't have the stakes that you needed for this, right? Like you didn't really. I don't think you were really worried that much, even though you kind of knew how it was going to work out. You didn't really have that much investment in any of the characters, or you're not really worried too much. And I think there just needed to be more. I don't know if it's. I'm not saying it's. I don't know if it needed more shock, or if it needed more gore, if it needed more just like, like.
I
don't know what it is.
I think it did need more edge, because all joking aside, yes, even if you didn't want it, even if you didn't want to make a really
something more to like
upsetting film, at the end of the day, it's baked into. I mean, it's a story about a paedophile cannibal, and no matter what anyone protests, oh no, that is kind of part of, that's what hooks people in, because it's gross and disgusting and horrible and scary, right? So I think if you're not, if I don't see why you would do the Albert Fish story like with that,
avoid that stuff.
Yeah, like I think you have to even just you have to shove someone. You don't even have to be graphic about it. You have to do the actors doing the work, like reacting in enough of a way that
Right.
it comes across, right? Because this is
Mm.
pretty. I mean, I know, you know, murders is murder and whatever, but even in the pantheon, this is pretty. I remember the first time I read about Albert Fish, I was like, oh, this is pretty
Yeah.
heinous shit, right? So I
Right.
think you kind of need a bit of grit in the oyster for this kind
Yeah.
of thing.
So
Otherwise,
I think that's
why
probably, I
bother?
mean, that's what I was saying. Someone said it was more like a Disney Plus movie, which I think is kind of along the right lines, is that it, I mean, I don't know, yeah, how graphic it needed to be, but you needed something a little bit more to raise the stakes, I think. I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was just a little bit too safe with everything. It was
Yes.
just
Agreed.
it was too much off screen. It was too much kind of implied stuff. You just needed a little bit
Yeah.
more kind of like, this is a serial killer and this is what he did and this is why
Yeah.
we should, watch this
I mean,
movie, right? So
to your point, it's kind of interesting, actually. I think you're right on the money, because it's kind of a bit bland. And then towards the end of the film, when they start reading his letters, and it's in his own words, and he's very, very glad. Just him reading, just reading in his own words what he said and sent to the parents of the child, right?
yeah.
I mean, just hearing it is, well, it's not quite enough, obviously, but obviously that's wherein lies the kind of, that's how you tell this story, right? Is you have
Right.
to,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
few bits of the film that started to pique my interest a little bit, because
Right.
it was like, oh man, you know, you really kind of got to why this, what is,
Why the story should, why you wanted to tell the story in the first place, right? Yeah. So like, yeah. So yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure how much I wanted to see, but I did want to see more because then I think that's I think it's yeah. I mean, I can see why it would be a hard line to tread in that one, right? So, but yeah, it was just a little bit too bland, a little bit too
a
yeah.
little bit
So what?
too gray.
Hooray!
Oh,
Cry,
cry for
cry,
our
cry,
American friends.
if you will. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, Patrick Bauchow, whatever, he was okay. It wasn't particularly great, I think, but he was all right. He kind of had a little bit of sinister to him. Maybe a better actor there might have actually given a little bit more to him. He was kind of, it was fine, but it wasn't particularly notable, whatever. So
I think
maybe.
he was okay. I think yeah, I think he was all right. But yeah, that Albert, I mean, as Norm Macdonald would say, what a jerk, right? That Albert.
What a jerk! Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you brought it up before we started recording that the comedian Norm Macdonald had a great joke about him, which was it goes through all the bad things that this guy did, and then he goes at the end, he goes, "What a jerk!"
Right.
Is the understatement of the year, right? So that's the idea, right? So
we should mention as well, it ends with him in the electric chair.
right.
And yeah,
which also felt so. Yeah, I'd say that was really unsatisfying because I mean, when you're even I know I've never seen anyone electrified, but I'm sure it doesn't look like that. Like he was just like, right? I'm pretty sure like I don't know. It just felt so awkward and sagey like that whole sequence. So it was yeah. I don't know.
and
I think
also you've got to mention the other. I know there's like 2 or 3 other victims, I think, that were all certified that he did kill them, and then there's a bunch of other ones that they're still not sure to this day.
Yeah.
But if you were to go by this film, you would, if you weren't really paying attention, you'd think he only killed the one child,
one girl. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think he was probably quite prolific, especially at this time, right? So,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of his stuff, they've never. But yeah, it's possible that he killed a hell of a lot more.
Hell of a lot, yeah. And especially at that time in the 1920s, I mean, you could probably get away with that kind of stuff. And
well, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's never find out, right? So, yeah.
I
So
suppose
anyway, it was.
The one other thing I would say, maybe just jumped into my head, and again, I don't know where the blame lays at this exactly, is they kind of make an attempt, because the one thing, the thing that's most difficult to get your head around is, in the real life story, is why would you let this man alone with your kids, right, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Of course, sometimes they were abductions or whatever, and I think that the kind of thing, the point they try and make here is that everyone is poor, right? So, and he has a certain wealth, he spreads it around and gets in their good graces. But I mean, from the get-go, he's so clearly a creep. Like, so
Yeah.
overly interested in other people's children. Like,
Yeah.
do wonder, and again, I don't know if that might be true to life, or like bad parenting, or yeah, it might be another performer would have played Albert Fish with like a little bit more kind of charm or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, and maybe the real one wasn't that. These things do happen, but
Who knows?
but
Yeah.
it didn't quite. You never quite understood. Don't leave him. No, what are you doing?
But at the same time, we also have to think of it from their point of view, which is that, I mean, we're seeing it from, the modern viewpoint, which is
Yes,
that you don't give your kids to strangers or like random people. But at that time, it was probably there's people who didn't think about that. There weren't it wasn't like a normal thing to think about serial killers and pedophiles. So like, people didn't really know about that stuff, right? It was relatively. I mean, of course, they've been around since beginning of mankind, I'm sure, but they haven't really been famously until until sort of 20th century. It's kind of more of a 20th century invention, really, right? So
if you went in a time machine and went back, not even that far.
Jack Ripper.
Let's say you went back to the beginning of the 90s, beginning of the 80s, and told, people, in a few years, your children will actually be doing drills in school just in case a shooter happens to pass by. No one would have believed you. What the fuck?
Yeah, of course.
Don't be stupid, you alarmist. Fucking
right.
Yeah, but that has weirdly become the norm, right? And that's not hyperbole. That is actually that is something on the curriculum now, right? People what to do if a shooter comes into your school, which is insane if you think about it. But
yeah, well, tell that to the Americans. I want to take away my guns
with their fucking gries.
Gries and their guns.
Right.
Gry guns.
So, shall we?
Anything else to say about Gry Man?
Not really. I mean, it's all a bit dry, and it's not terrible, but it's the only Albert Fish film that we have.
Exactly. Yeah. There was one good kind of adjective I think I saw in one of the reviews, which I thought was good for this. Is it's toothless, right? It's sort of like I think it describes it well, which is that it tells the story and you kind of get the basic kind of plot points and the idea, but it doesn't have any teeth to it, right? It doesn't give you like the real, you don't really feel like the pull of it, or the grit, that you should get from it. So,
and nothing more useless than a pedophile cannibal with no teeth.
That's right. Yes. Well, you can gum it, I guess, right? So, so there we go. So maybe looking forward to a next Albert Fish movie someday.
Right? Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a gap in the market, which sounds like a silly thing to say, but there is.
I'm surprised they haven't made another one since then. I mean, it seems like a perfect kind of story for Hollywood, right? So,
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure over the years there's probably been one in development or something.
So
for whatever reason, I suppose it is a bit of a hard sell. If you were going to do it as a big budget period film, because it is one of those things where you'd have to have someone attached who's gonna totally ignore anyone trying to sand the edges off it. It would have to be a filmmaker who it's my way or the highway. Someone like someone who does big hits and then gets to do whatever he likes, like a Christopher Nolan or someone like that. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Maybe if they were allowed to tackle such a story.
I'd love to see a Christopher Nolan biopic on Albert Fish. That would be really interesting. So based on Albert Fish, really the only thing that could make Albert Fish any worse was if he was also a Nazi. And with that, why don't we take a little break?
Right. Yes. So yes, if
we take a quick break and then we'll come back in a second.
Okay. What are we doing? We're not having a break, are we? We're just carrying on.
We only got 5 minutes left. Let's just take a break. Let's jump back on.
Oh, okay. All right. You want to jump off? All right. Okay. Well, what a great break that was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Actually, I have no idea what happened in the break because this is normally audio, so I put in a bit of music. But it seems weird doing that and just leaving the screen blank. So either nothing happened or something happened, but I don't know what it would be. Do you see what I mean?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Now that's clear. So yes. So if you haven't had enough disturbing child murder, don't worry, you're in luck, because my choice, which I think is the opposite of Toothless, a lot of teeth here. This is In a Glass Cage, or Tras el Cristal, a Spanish movie from 1986, feature debut of Augusti Villaronga, I guess, who also wrote it. And this is a film about
This is a film.
Sorry?
This is a film.
Yes, this is a film about a former Nazi, as played by Gunther Meisner, who, Willy Wonka fans rejoice, he was Slugworth in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory back in the day.
Which one was Slugworth?
Slugworth was, he was the Willy Wonka's right-hand man.
Oh, is like his employee.
You thought he was a bad guy because he was going around like getting the children to tell their secrets, but he turned out to
right. Okay, yeah.
So you thought that was bad. Wait till you see him here. Yeah, so he's a
maybe it is the same character.
Yeah, I'm guessing this is set in the 40s or the 50s, right? And he seems to have been he basically seems to be a Nazi who's escaped justice, like a doctor or a scientist or something, who was at the concentration camps. And we first see him like beating this naked boy in the basement of his house. He's living in somewhere in Spain with his wife Griselda, as played by Marisa Paredes, who oddly enough also has she starts off with narration in this film as well, and then they gave up with that. Like, I think a little bit. But this works a little bit better here because there's throughout the film there are various characters reading from like journals and things, right? So it seems slightly less arbitrary and more a part of the film. So we at the beginning of the film, something happens to him. Like, it's intimated that he falls down some steps or off a building or something, and
I think he tries to commit suicide. He goes to the roof of the building he's just beat the kid on, and he jumps off.
Do you think it was a suicide attempt?
Oh, it definitely was.
Because you don't see him, because I rewound it to check, you don't see him. What you see is him, you're right, he goes up on top of the roof, and then you just see him kind of sway slightly out of frame, but you don't see him fall, you don't see him jump, and he never mentions it.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it was because I read some like reviews, and they all referred to it as his suicide attempt.
Well, it could be right, but it's never really spelled out.
But why else would he go up there and then fall off the roof?
I don't know. But anyway,
I think you're supposed to think it was a suicide attempt because
maybe
he's such an awful person.
Maybe. Yeah. Guilt, I guess. And then he ends up in this
because also one thing you forgot to mention is that he's been beating this boy in the basement of this random abandoned building, and someone has been watching him, and they kind of run away.
Right.
And he realized he's just been watched. So I think he was just trying to get away from that.
Right. Could be. But someone is watching him and observing. Anyway, for whatever reason, he does end up in an iron lung, kind of, and he needs a helper to help his mother, and they have a daughter as well. They have a young daughter in the house as well.
Lena.
Yes, and out of nowhere, this young man, as played by David Sust, turns up claiming to be a nurse, and so it turns out he's the guy, right, who's observed. He's the guy who knows all the secrets. So he basically blackmails, because the wife's having none of it from the beginning. She kind of susses him out immediately. He knows he's not a nurse, and he's but obviously he said to he's whispered in Gunther Meisner's ear, if you don't give me a job, I'll tell everyone that you're Willy Wonka's, that you're a Nazi, and you're a child murderer, blah, blah. So, of course, he insists that he stays and becomes his helper, right? And I guess over the course of the film, David Sust's character kind of expands his reach and his power in the household. Spoilers as well, ends up killing the wife, and kind of there's a kind of reveal or two towards the end of the film, which we might kind of keep a little bit secret. But basically, he's a psychopath in the same way as, I suppose, another comparison. I was wondering if this film might have actually been an influence on it. I'm not sure when the short story dates from, but do you remember that movie Apt Pupil?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that in here.
Yeah, I actually read a couple of reviews about this that were compares it to people as well.
Right. Right. Actually, it only just occurred to me now, oddly enough, but I know the film was, well, it was Bryan Singer, so it's like 97, 98, something like that. But it's a Stephen King short story, isn't it, Apt Pupil? And
it was from the same book as Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, okay. So when does that, is that, so that would have been probably early, so probably before
82 was the short story.
Interesting.
So yeah,
you never know, it could even have served uncredited influence for this film as well.
Could have, yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's definitely a comparison to be made there of the kind of young, the young psychopath somehow beginning kind of slightly in awe, I guess he is, of this Nazi, and in a way, like he wants to learn from him. You know, I love death, he says, and he he just wants to know more about what they did at this concentration camps, and it turns out that they were injecting kids in the heart with gasoline. I didn't have a chance to look this up. I mean, I'm assuming they didn't totally make that up. I mean, they did do weird shit experiments, but I'm not quite sure what the benefit, what you learn from that exactly. But they all went a bit loopy in those camps. They were doing, experiments with, just if you shove someone's severed arm down their own throat, do they die in it? Just fucking obviously nightmare.
I didn't get the impression that it was an experiment on what would happen if you inject someone with gasoline. I think it was just like a particularly brutal way of killing someone. I think he was in charge of killing the kids, and then he probably just got bored with gassing them all, and then he decided to think of other interesting ways of doing it.
Yeah, but I get the feeling his character is that kind of justified it to himself with this kind of thin veneer of that he was researching something, right?
Really? I mean, based on you hear him reading out the diary and stuff, like the diary that he wrote. It didn't seem like he was interested in science. It was just sort of like he was more interested in the feeling that he gets when he, the arousal he gets from killing children. I think it was more like a just a personal, sort of like a, what do you call it? Like a fetish.
Right. Well, again, I mean, that's, more stuff to chew over and discuss after you take your loved one to see this film in the theatre as a date movie. Another talking point over coffee and pie, right? And yes, and eventually David Suss's character does start dragging home young wastrel children, young boys, and reenacts the I mean, there's one particular scene which the camera doesn't really shy away from. There's a long extended scene of a young boy who's just been injected with gasoline in the heart, dying. It's not feel good viewing.
Yeah. And then when he finally dies, he goes, it's just true. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So, In a Glass Cage, way back in the day, I remember this being one of those films that would turn up on those lists. We've mentioned this.
Is this a Video Nasty?
It wasn't a Video Nasty. I'm not actually sure if this got. I don't know if this got a release on video. I mean, I suppose it's not a visceral film. It's not like gory or anything like that. It's just kind of nasty, right? So that's actually a good question. I have no idea if In a Glass Cage. My guessing, it might have just never been submitted in that environment, and they didn't even bother. I don't even know if it played theatrically in the UK. I didn't think to look it up, but the reason I brought it up is as we mentioned, if you grew up in the environment as a young horror fan, you ended up automatically being interested in lists of like controversial films, whether they were official video nasties or not, right? So yeah, on those lists of bootleg things that you could order from, you know, certain sources or under the counter, with all the Italian zombie and cannibal films and stuff, In a Glass Cage was a, you know, a perennial kind of shock favorite, and it, you know, gathered a certain cult status back in the day, which I feel has dissipated somewhat over the years. I'm not sure if In a Glass Cage is still in the pantheon of cult kind of, oh, you got to see this kind of shocking films anymore. And I'm not sure if that's, I mean, this is going to be my first question to you, actually. I'm not sure if that's because it isn't shocking anymore, or if it's just kind of been forgotten. Or, I mean, this was your first viewing of In a Glass Cage, right? So
Yes.
you didn't quite know what to expect. So, well, broadly, what did you think of it? But also, I mean, was it shocking and disturbing, or not so much anymore?
Well, let me ask you, how many times have you seen this?
I think this is my second time seeing this.
Second time. Okay.
Yeah.
What was your impression the first time?
I think the first time I found it, yeah, pretty shocking and disturbing. But the first time I saw the film, I think I was quite impressed by it in terms of like, it's got a kind of melancholy edge to it, and it has a cumulative effect. And when it ends, I couldn't exactly tell you what it's about or what I've learned or anything like that, but it felt like it ended in a way that it felt like that a work of art that had taken me on like a kind of journey, and I found it quite impressive, and not just like shocking for the sake of being shocking. I felt it earned whatever, because at the beginning of the film, especially when people start putting random real images from concentration camps in your credit scenes, you're like, hang on now, because you don't fuck about with that stuff, right? Like, you have to earn putting that stuff in your film,
right.
I think. And I remember the first time I saw this film, I felt by the time the film had ended, I thought, okay, that earned it. Had a kind of weird thesis about, you know, the dark heart of man, or you know, if you go poking around in those areas, how you can get sucked in. Or, and this time, I mean, it was difficult because how can I say, I was kind of knew what to expect, and it didn't give me any extra layer, I don't think, that I didn't get the first time. So it maybe wasn't necessarily as rich a film as I might have given it the benefit of the doubt being the, but it stood up. I still think it's a good film. Yeah, but because I knew what was gonna happen, I wasn't shocked necessarily, but I could feel that, you know, it's not pleasant viewing either, especially if you're not prepared for it, right?
Right. Let's see. I was trying to think of what I was going to say about this movie today, and I couldn't find this one particularly difficult to sort of put into like a concrete emotion or opinion one way or the other. It's I don't know. I alternated between thinking that it was like pretty kind of, I don't know. I was borderline gratuitous, and then on the other hand, being like really dull. Like it was. I thought it was quite impressive how you could take a story about. Well, I mean, you basically want to make a story about like literally the worst person in the world, right? And so, who's worse than Hitler? Well, take Hitler and then make him also a pedophile, right? Okay, well there you go. Now you get and more than that, let's take him and then so it's like worse than Hitler, is it not? So you got to make him a Nazi and a pedophile and a child killer. Oh, okay, let's put it all together and then let's try to make him sympathetic. And I was like, I think that was where I think it was A for effort, but I think it was like a doomed idea from the start, which is that you can't take the worst person in the world and then try to make the audience care about him. So it's yeah, I don't know. It's and then it was. I thought I feel like maybe I felt a lot of times like losing focus and just kind of like wishing it would end. And I didn't know if I found myself actively disliking it at times. And I wasn't sure if it was because of the content or because I was just bored or, and I couldn't really put my finger on why I was sort of like, I was quite happy when it finally ended because I found it a bit of a slog, but I don't know if it was like psychologically, if it was just because I didn't really want to watch this type of thing. Going back to the Gray Man, where I wanted more, whereas this one I don't think it went too far, but I just sort of like I just didn't really want to watch this movie for some reason. It was really a hard watch for me. Like I just really didn't. And I don't know if it was because I was bored. I don't know what it was, because it was quite. It was trying to do like the kind of the art house approach kind of thing, and which was not always terrible, but yeah, I don't know. I found it, considering it was about like a pedophile Nazi child killer trapped in an iron lung being, sorry, I may just spoil that thing that you were going to say you were going to keep, but
okay, well, as long as you announce it this time, yeah.
Well, but that's the other thing is that I was a little confused about this too. Is like because it was the kid that he tortured when he was a kid, when he was. Was that the big reveal?
I think that's the
because I was really confused. I was like, well, I just assumed that was him from the beginning. So when it was kind of presented as a reveal, I was sort of like, well, wasn't that kind of obvious all along? I thought that was we were meant to know that. So, how was it? Was that a reveal for you?
Well, up until that point, the only other victim we know of is the one that I assume died in the basement, right? So I'm not sure if there's anyone else we're supposed to think I know what you mean. You can make that assumption maybe, but
well, he was one of the kids that he did the gasoline to in the concentration camp. Isn't that what the idea is?
Oh, I didn't get that.
Or then there was another thing where there was a picture of them holding hands on a roof on a cliff top. So what exactly was the reveal?
Well, I think it wasn't he taking revenge on someone else's behalf was what I thought.
Oh, was it? Who was the other person?
I can't remember now, but it was someone like a friend or a brother or something along those.
Oh, okay. Lines. I don't think I even got that.
The way I read just the general thesis then of the film was that he started life as like this kind of angel of vengeance character and then got twisted along the way by his exposure to the darkness and ended up being as bad as the Gundam. That's kind of how I read it.
I thought that too, but I thought that he was the kid in the concentration camp that had been injected with gasoline that somehow lived and had been stalking this guy, get ready to get revenge, years later, which was, I thought that was a good idea.
You could be right. I might have.
Okay. Anyway, regardless, I mean, so it was supposed to be a lot of things that kind of refers to this as a kind of a reveal, but the reveal was kind of, as we can see, kind of murky, and or was obvious one way or the other. And then I don't know, and then he sort of kind of gets taken away, and I didn't really understand a lot of characters' motivations. Like I didn't really know why Rena, the daughter, was staying with him, and then like all stuff. But I guess it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It was just kind of like I'm glad it was over. So, but I'm not really sure what my relationship is to the movie. Maybe this needs to be another rewatch for me, because as much as I don't really want to rewatch it,
it doesn't sound like something you can rush out and rewatch.
Yeah, I don't think I don't really actively don't want to rewatch it, but I feel like maybe I would be more in touch with my opinions of this movie if I did rewatch it again. I'm not sure. It was. I did think it was quite long. It definitely could have used some trimming, I think.
So you're not quite sure if your aversion to it is of revulsion or of boredom or some combination of.
Oh, combination of both. Yeah, yeah, could be
Right.
both. Yeah, so
So you
yeah.
didn't, did you feel, I mean, I agree with it to a certain extent that I think built into it is there's a certain, it's not a film that's gripping and exciting all the way through, but I use
Right,
that word cumulative in so much as I do feel as if
right.
some films are like that. They're like,
It builds.
by the
Yeah,
time
yeah,
you
yeah.
get to the end, it's worth it. But
Yeah, right.
did that not work for you, or?
I think I kind of already checked out, I think, by the time it started to really start to build. So yeah, so I don't know. I didn't really have much of an effect on me. I was just kind of like, oh, I was relieved it was done. I was like, okay, fine, I can turn this movie off. So yeah, but I'm not really sure again, I'm not sure why I actively dislike this movie. I'm
It's
not sure. I
interesting
can
though.
put my finger on it.
It's also difficult for me to tell, but I also sense a little bit, and I don't know what I put that down to, if it's just I've changed or films have changed or what, but yeah, I think if I'd have seen this film for the first time now, I think
Mm,
I would probably have been less impressed with it.
mm,
And it's slightly difficult for me to get out from under my original
mm,
kind of, because
right,
as well, that original reading is just as genuine, because it could be that everyone who reacted to it positively then might, do you know what I mean? It could just be that the
right,
landscape has changed, or it could be that I've
right.
changed, or it
Yes,
could, yeah. So I because obviously I wasn't the only person who rated this film when it was new. A lot of people did, and a lot of people who were already the age that I am now. So it might not be something to do with personal development, which leads me to think it might
right.
be to do with how just the world has
The
changed.
time,
Yeah.
right. The world's changed. Yeah. So
So
yeah.
yes, so it's definitely I would. Whereas once upon a time I would have definitely said, if you're not easily shocked and all that, then yes, you should definitely give In a Glass Cage. Now it's not on the definitely list anymore.
Yeah,
And like I
yeah.
said,
Because
it does seem to have fallen out of favor a little bit. Like I might not be the only one who's fallen out with it a little bit. It's not on those lists of must-see cult films anymore. It seems to have drifted
yeah.
off it.
Because yeah, I don't think it was really that shocking. I mean, there was a couple really difficult to watch scenes, which were, I
Yeah,
guess, at the time meant to be shocking, or whatever. But I don't think it was particularly shocking or like revolting. I think it was just ultimately. I think going back to my original point was that the main character, or one of the main characters, is this like basically the epitome of the worst humanity has to offer, and then
Slugworth, you mean? That
yeah,
fucking
yeah, Slugworth.
Slugworth. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you put him at the kind of the mercy of this basically like revenge seeking kind of psychopath.
Mm.
And then I think I guess you're supposed to feel kind of sorry for him that he has this sort of that he can't protect himself from this person or his family. But at the
I
same
think the
time,
family more, especially the girl. I think that's why
yeah, the girl, I guess, right? The idea is that
yeah.
he can't protect her, but she doesn't really seem to want protecting. I guess it was always a thing. So, but yeah, so I don't know. Maybe that's why it doesn't work for me because I mean all the characters are so unlikable that you there's no one really to you don't really care what happens. There's no one to really to root for. I guess, right? Maybe that's what it. I don't know.
Does it maybe feel a bit arch in that way that art house films can sometimes,
Yeah,
where
yeah, could
it's
be.
it's yeah, like
Yeah.
there's no, it's a little bit too distanced for you to kind
Could
of
be that, yeah. And even like the girl could be the one that you really feel bad for, that because she's sort of in the biggest danger throughout the whole movie, and then she kind of embraces it at the end, and you're kind of like left with like, oh, okay, what's up with this? You know what I mean? Like I don't know, it just felt kind of
yeah. I suppose I
yeah,
suppose one of the reasons um I never really felt that the girl was in any danger for some reason. Like I never sensed that
yeah,
she was in any danger.
yeah. I think
If it had
maybe
been
that
a
was it.
little
So
boy, maybe, because I would have drawn more parallels with, because all the victims are
right,
male, right? If I'm not
boys, yeah,
mistaken.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm wondering if that would have made a difference. That because then,
maybe
but somehow, yeah, he doesn't seem to have the girl. I never felt that the girl was in any danger. Like I don't even feel that the main character would have killed her just out of spite or something, just to piss off the
uh,
father character. Like I always felt that she was in a more or less safe pair of hands.
right, yeah,
Um, So if that's what they were trying to do, is build, but again, I don't know if they were even trying to do that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were first. I don't. I'm not sure if it's a film about. I'm not sure if it's a film about suspense necessarily, even though it does have that set piece where the mother gets killed. That seems almost from a different film, doesn't it? That's more like from a conventional horror or thriller, and it's actually quite a well-directed suspense scene. But it's almost from a different film, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there are like elements. It's like, oh, that's a pretty good scene. This is a good scene, but I think altogether, it just generally just didn't work for me. And I think that yeah, I can't. It's a really tough one for me. I can't really put my finger on my why it didn't work for me that much. But I do think it was one thing. It was just too long. If it had been tightened up, maybe it might have worked a little bit better. But I guess that's the art house version.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was an interest for me to revisit as well, because like I said, I'm slightly I'm glad I did. This is why I enjoy, like, I used to not enjoy watching films that much, but rewatching films. But I've come to appreciate the art of coming back to something every few years and kind of comparing,
seeing if you've changed.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting. It's annoyingly interesting, actually, because there's not enough time to watch all the fucking films I want to watch just once, right? And then you're getting back into competing narratives within your just one person, and but you know, I suppose that's all the fun of the fair, right? And that's what all that's what all the discussion and the back and forth, and that's why we're here, right? So it's not
so eventually what we'll start doing is we'll just start doing all of the movies we've already done on this podcast, and we'll just do them all over again.
You say that as a joke, but actually, oddly enough, if you no, we won't. But seriously, if you had that as a podcast, like if you did let's say a 10-year run, and then you went back to the beginning again, you would probably find that more rewarding than you might think. Like, maybe not all the way, but be certain episodes that would definitely benefit from doing that. But again, who has the time, right?
The time. Well, which is the one you would?
No, I was going to say, is there someone that does a podcast? I heard about this the other day. I'd never heard of this before, but isn't there someone that does a podcast? It's called I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the idea is that they do a show, they do a whole show about every minute of a film.
Oh, really? Okay.
One of the films they did, oddly enough, because it was the projection booth. The projection booth were talking about, they did Top Secret recently, which I know you like as well. The Zaz. Hey, you've never seen Top Secret?
No, I have, but it's not one of my favorite though. I haven't seen it.
Okay. It was one of my favorites. For some reason I assumed it was yours. I haven't seen it in years, but yeah, so apparently they were talking about it on that show. There's another podcast. One of the films they've done is Top Secret. But so they do a show, which I guess is like this. It's like 30, 45, 1 hour on every minute.
1 minute.
Yeah. So like
that movie.
I'm guessing one season lasts 2 years or something if they do it weekly.
To do one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's proper deep stuff, right?
Deep dive.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm up for. I was trying to think of what film would I actually listen to a podcast like that about? Like, is there one? Can you think of anyone? Like, okay, I might give it a go for this one film.
I would give that go for like once just to see what it would be like.
Yeah, but which film would be
like what? I don't know about which film. I think it would really matter because it's not really about the film. It's about what they're doing about that minute, right? You know, how do they film? How do they analyze that minute, right? So I'd be interested. Yeah, I don't think I'd really care what movie it was. I'd be really more interested to see what they do, and then I'd probably lose interest, to be brief.
Yeah, it could be like the worst film in the world could actually.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Best in that context.
It's all about them, really more about the movie, right? So I think it's
right.
So good luck to them. If you find the name of it, let me know. I'm interested to hear at least one.
Okay.
Episode.
Well, yeah. I can't remember. I'm sure you can. There can't be that many podcasts that do that, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, there we go. That's quite enough child murder for this episode.
I think so. Yeah. Let's try something else.
Yes, so well, next time we shall both be responding to
Oh,
In a Glass Cage. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck
Good
with
luck.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. So until then, yeah, I've been Clive Davis. And
Ta-ta.
this has been,
Well,
yeah.
hi
And,
guys. Thank you very much for joining. See you. Bye-bye.
you know, at some point it's gonna get like so meta that someone's gonna do a minute by minute breakdown
Podcast.
podcast of the minute by minute breakdown of the film.
Or they're doing a minute by minute breakdown of their podcast about the minute by minute podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'd never do anything so foolish
No,
as that. No.
That's dumb.
You're in a safe pair of hands with us. And then we stab you in the heart with gasoline.
See ya. Bye.